You are listening to Co-Create Your Life. In this podcast, we delve deep into the law of attraction, dispel common misconceptions, and give our listeners the tools they need to build a magical, purposeful existence in their everyday lives. Reclaim the creative power you already possess and join us at cocreationcoaching.org/create. That's cocreationcoaching.org/create.
Welcome to Co-Create Your Life. This is episode 31, How to Know If the Universe Wants You to Have Your Desire. I am Brandon Oliveris.
And I'm Christine Oliveris.
And today we are talking about your desires. It's hopefully a really awesome topic, and I think something that a lot of people have anxiety about, because I've had many clients who have asked me about this exact kind of topic. And so I hope that we have the answer that you want to hear today.
For sure.
How do you know if the universe wants you to have your desire? So before I get to that, first of all, if you want to see the show notes for this episode, you can head over to cocreationcoaching.org/create031 and get the show notes there, and even get the transcript if you sign up for the mailing list. And you can also leave a comment. So, before we get started, we have our weekly segment, Quote of the Week. And today's quote comes from someone named, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly, Paulo Coelho. And actually, Christine's going to treat us today, and she'll be the one reading our quote.
Should I sing it? No, I'm just kidding.
You should definitely sing it.
Nah, I won't sing it. There is one great truth on this planet. Whoever you are, or whatever it is that you do, when you really want something, it's because that desire originated in the soul of the universe. The soul of the world is nourished by people's happiness.
That's awesome. I love that quote.
Yes.
I believe I found that quote while reading this book from Vishen Lakhiani called The Code of the Extraordinary Mind. I believe that's where I found it. He had a lot of awesome quotes in that book.
Which book? I don't even remember.
Remember how I got that free book from Amazon?
Oh, yeah.
And it just kind of popped up on my phone. I'm like, hey, yeah, why not? And then I started taking that course from him.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just like the way you said his name was fast.
Vishen Lakhiani. Yeah, well, I learned how to say it finally. But,
gotcha.
But yeah, so I think it came from that book. And I really like this quote because it really touches upon what I want to be talking about today. And like I said, I get a lot of questions like this from clients. And so it's something that I think, really needs to be touched upon. And so, what generally happens, a client will ask me, how do I know that, the universe wants me to have this desire? Or sometimes they'll ask something like, if I work on this, because people feel like they have to rush. They feel like they have to really get it soon, you know what I mean? And so they'll say something, if I work on this, and I let go and I don't actually try so hard, what if it takes a year? What if it takes 5 or 10 years? And I got a question just like that a week or two ago, actually. And I said, well, I'll explain with an answer here in this podcast, but I said, no, that's not how it works. And this quote outlines exactly why that is. So what is the answer here? The basic thing I want to say is, just like the quote says, your desire comes from the universe. It nourishes the universe. And I love how it says that the soul of the world, the soul of the universe, is nourished by your desire.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I love that. And so, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, your desire isn't arbitrary. And remember some time ago when I said in the podcast about you are deserving of anything you want, anything you do. You are deserving of that, and the universe believes you are deserving of that. And so there's nothing to worry about there, right? So the basic message I want to start out with is this. If you weren't meant to have your desire, you would not feel it so strongly. And
so true.
I told my client this, and there was sort of a moment of silence there while she processed it, and she was like, "Oh." And I said, "Yeah, if you weren't meant to get your desire, then you wouldn't have it, or you wouldn't have such a strong desire for it."
I think like how strong the desire is scares people, because I know that's the case for me, where it's almost scary, like how strong it is. So it's like we shy away from it because it's so strong.
Because we
That
make
it's
it
like,
we make it this big deal. We make it like the end of the world if we don't get it, and we are afraid of not getting it.
yeah,
And so I think when we're afraid of not getting it, we kind of have one of two responses. Either number one, it's safer to not even try.
right.
Or number two, we pursue it with such vigor that we just don't give the universe the space it needs to help us.
My problem's the first one.
Right. And either one of those approaches is not going to be helpful. If you do the first approach, where you don't even try, because why try? Because it's too big, it's never going to happen, then you're holding yourself back from something that is from your soul. And when it's the second approach where, you try so hard that you never give the universe the space to actually do its thing, to actually help, to actually allow the manifestation process to take place, then it can never happen either. Or if it does, it'll be very, sabotaged and not exactly how you want it to be. Because you don't have the resources on your own to create this thing. And so when you try to do it on your own without help from the universe, it's not going to turn out well. So neither of those are things that you want to do, because you're not going to get your desire that way. But again, if you have that desire, it means that, you are supposed to have it. Now, I hear people might ask something like, what about desires that, we have, and then it turns out we didn't want them in the end, or that they weren't possible, or, like an example I give is early 2016, when, things weren't going that well with co-creation coaching. And so I thought about, like, okay, what if I just go back to school? Because I never finished college. What if I go back to school and I go become an accountant? Was the thing I was going to do.
Yeah.
And you remember, Christine, like, I had a pretty strong desire for that. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go check out this online school.
Yeah.
And
I was like,
I'm going to go check out this online school, and I'm going to see, they have a good accounting program, and I'm going to do this thing. And I was pretty excited, right? And I was really, really going for it. And I got accepted, and everything was on track. And then I slammed into the obstacles. And then more obstacles. And then more obstacles. And there's actually a kind of enforced time limit that the universe gave me, because of certain circumstances, I couldn't have gotten into the school for about 6 to 9 months, I think it was. And so I was really frustrated and thinking, why am I being held back from this? And then with a bit of breathing room, I realized, hey, wait a second, I never actually wanted this. I just thought I wanted it because I was afraid, because co-creation coaching wasn't doing that great. But I'd far prefer to have co-creation coaching.
yeah.
And then I had kind of a counterexample just this year, where, again, I really wanted, this time it was, co-creation coaching was doing decently well, but I wanted to get off of SSI, and so I manifested it, and it came in through, by means of a full-time job, and I got that job, and, thought like, oh, this is great, this is the thing I want, and this is,
Oh, I know.
the fulfillment of all my dreams, and now I can...
You said, I want to do this. I hope I'm there for a long time.
Exactly. And then within, maybe a month and a half, reality hit. I'm like, hey, wait a second. This is not what I want for long term. Now, with that time, the universe allowed it to be fulfilled, I think, because it was sort of a means by which some of my other goals could get fulfilled, such as me getting a business coach, me kind of outfitting my home office. I couldn't have done that otherwise. Stuff like that. You know what I mean? And a lot of the growth that co-creation coaching has experienced in recent times has come from me being able to invest in it and, get the resources I needed. So it wasn't a bad thing, but also as I pursued it, I realized, wait, this is not the thing I want to do.
Not long term.
Not long term. And so you see those two examples, one where my desire was halted because it was not actually what I wanted to do, just I thought so, and one where it wasn't halted, but it didn't take very long for me to realize, hey, wait a second, I actually don't want this. And so yes, that can happen, and both times I felt those desires very strongly. And so you might say, well, wait a second, if you felt those desires very strongly, and the universe didn't want you to have those, at least in the first case, then how is what you're saying true? How is it true that if I feel this desire strongly, the universe wants me to have it? And I would say that sometimes we mix up soul desires with ego desires.
Yeah.
And, I've talked about your core essence and making sure your desire is in alignment with that core essence. And, if it's not, then it's not going to work. And in both cases, these manifestations came from what I would describe as ego desires. Now, in one case, that ego desire was useful for a soul desire, and so it was allowed to go through. But both of them, I think, were ego desires, because in the first case, I was insecure, I wasn't making money, I really didn't know what I was supposed to do in life, and so I kind of took a random jump and tried to go in a different direction. In the second case, I just, as quickly as possible, wanted to get off of SSI. That was sort of the path of least resistance. I accepted the path and went in that direction, and then realized...
And sometimes things are in steps.
Yes, sometimes things are in steps. So, those are both ego desires. So my kind of condition on that is that your desire has to be a soul desire. But if this is the desire you've held for a very long time, and this is something that you really have wanted, and, this is something that has not left you even after months or years of pursuit, that's not an ego desire, okay? So I'm going to talk about how you know if it's an ego desire or a soul desire. If it's an ego desire, it won't be long lasting. It may last for weeks. It may even last for a few months, but it won't last for years.
Oh yeah, mine's years.
Right. It won't last for years. So, something can last for a few months where it's like an infatuation, or it's just a kind of a phase where like, oh, this is what but after a while it wanes and you say, yeah, not so much, you know what I mean? And it doesn't really work. That's how you know it's an ego desire. The second way you can know if it's an ego desire is once you start pursuing it and once you start seeing progress, the desire dries up because, you actually realize that's not what you wanted. And this has happened with clients I've had. They're pursuing a certain goal or a goal in a certain way. Sometimes if it's like relationship, they'll pursue a certain person. And I always get questions like, can I manifest a specific person? And like I always say, it depends on your situation. But I always tell them, yeah, go ahead and try, because if it doesn't work, you'll know. If it's not the one, if they're not the one for you, you'll know soon enough. So once you start pursuing that desire, and you might even see some progress, and then you say, wait, it's just like what happened with me with my full-time job. I got it, I pursued it. So wait a second, that's not what I want, And so that'll happen. And that's how you know it's an ego desire, because with pursuing it, it fades. A soul desire, when you pursue it, will only grow. Now, it may fade through disuse, through you not thinking about it, through you denying it of yourself, and you may suppress it. But when you start to pursue it, it will not fade, it will only grow. And that's how you know it's soul desire.
So, a question then. So what if you had a desire since childhood? And could it be because people told you, like, that you could get that desire? Like, could it be programmed into you? Or would that classify as egoic?
I would say if a desire comes from childhood and it's something, there are desires we have in childhood that leave us after a while. Like when I was a kid, I wanted to, even though it wasn't possible, I wasn't blind, I wanted to be a police officer. Because my grandmother was, give me a break. And I was like 10. And
oh, we all wanted to be police officers. I did too. I think that's a common thing.
I wanted to be a police officer, and obviously that waned, and then I wanted to for a very long time, and I think this could have possibly been like a parallel reality of mine if I would have allowed it, but I wanted to be a concert pianist, and that's something that kind of arose every once in a while when I wasn't sure what I wanted to do in life, but that one is kind of the same, where when I tried to pursue it, the reality of it wasn't what I had dreamt. It was too much work. It made it not so artistic and not as like creative for me. So I'm better with it as a hobby. The third thing I wanted though was to be in some spiritual field as either a professional psychic or intuitive, or at first I wanted to like own a new age shop or something, because there was this really awesome new agey shop in a few hours away from where I grew up. And I loved that place. It was so peaceful there. And so at first I thought that, or maybe a professional psychic, or eventually it was like a spiritual teacher of some kind. That stuck with me probably since I was about 10 or 11. And that was always there in the background. And sometimes I would deny that. And I, in college, I thought maybe I want to be a programmer, or, I tried the pianist thing, or, different things like that. But the spiritual thing was always there. And, as long as I can remember, I was always making websites about spirituality. I created my first website about spirituality when I was probably 12 or 13 years old. And
I didn't know that.
I don't remember what it was called now, but I started creating websites about spirituality when I was maybe 12, 13, at the latest 14 years old. I think 12, because it was definitely 13 to 14 was kind of more my Christian stage, and it was before that. So anyway, I was creating websites and that kind of stuff. And it was actually through spirituality that I learned how to make websites, because I had a spiritual contact that taught me, and taught me the basics. Anyway, but that one was a long-term desire, and as I pursued it, it only got stronger. Now, I didn't succeed with it at first. You know how long, Christina, took me to succeed at that. I tried for years, and I didn't succeed with it until co-creation coaching. And but I wanted it for years and years and years, and that was a soul level desire. But answering your question, like I said, that came from childhood. But if someone tells you something in childhood and that is a desire of yours, again, you can't create what your soul level desire. I mean, what I mean by that is you can't manufacture it. You can't make it up. You can't, it's either real or not. And so if, for instance, someone tells you as a child, oh, you should be a doctor when you grow up or something. You know what I mean? Like, you're really good at science or something. You should be a doctor. Or my mother would always tell me you should be a programmer for some government agency. It was her dream for me. And I tried that. That was an ego desire. That kind of dried up. And, but if someone tells you something and it agrees with your soul, it agrees with something in your soul, it resonates. And the more you focus on it, the stronger it gets. Then that existed prior to them telling you, or else it wouldn't have resonated. They can't implant that in you because a soul level desire is with you since birth, even if you don't know it.
Okay, I'm about to start crying here.
Because you came here, your higher self implanted that desire in you and made sure there are people in your life that fanned that flame as you grew up, if that's, what happened, and I know for you it is. And so that resonated with you. And so that was, that's your soul desire. If it was an ego desire, it would fade over time, or you would say, that's not really what I want. Or if you thought it's what you wanted, then when you started to pursue it, the reality would be different and you would realize that's not what you wanted. It could not last for years.
Right,
There's just no way
right.
it could last for years. And
Okay.
another way that you can know is, and this is a tough one, I don't want people to overanalyze this because I know some people will. So take this in the context of the other 2 points. But as you start to pursue it, oftentimes you will run into a ridiculous number of obstacles.
Yeah.
When I wanted to go be an accountant last year, it was just so random. I ran into
you're talking about ego
desires, yeah.
Can
Sorry, the third way you know it's an ego desire is that you'll run into obstacles. When I wanted to go be an accountant last year, I ran into just tons of obstacles. It kind of worked out at first, and then I ran into an obstacle. And so here's the thing. People will say, well, what about resistance? I have resistance towards my desires. So does that mean it's ego level? When I hear people panicking. No. Here's what the pattern I see in ego desires. The pattern I see in ego desires is that you'll get an obstacle, and it'll either be one that literally cannot be overcome, or if you overcome it, almost instantly another one will pop up. And I'm not talking about resistance. I'm not talking about being scared. I'm talking about real physical obstacles that are jumping in your way. If that happens once, fine. If it happens twice, okay, perhaps. But if it starts to happen over and over and over again, and you feel like you're literally just pushing against a brick wall and ramming your head against it, and no matter what you do, those obstacles cannot be breached, then that is probably an ego desire. Now, again, this has to be taken in the context of the other 2 points, because if it's something you've been pursuing for years and you're running into obstacles, it could be a few things. It could be you're pursuing it in the wrong way. It could be just that you're not in the place where you can be on this part of the path yet. It could be that you just have so much resistance that you're manifesting these obstacles. But generally speaking, if you have a desire, especially a recent one, like, oh, I think I'll try this out, and then you try it, you will run into obstacle after obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. And they will either not be able to be overcome, or they will just be instantly replaced by another. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
and sometimes it's like God or the universe is like, no, don't go that way, and the door's shut.
Exactly.
And that's when you're like, okay, show me what I'm supposed to do here.
Yep.
It's like, sometimes it's just like, okay, this is not what God wants.
Because again, I want to give a counterexample, because I said my spiritual desire didn't get fulfilled for many, many years.
But you could tell, though, that it was fear, and it was, you didn't, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, but like that you didn't feel good enough, you didn't feel worthy to do this, and blah, 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 blah. So that was very different than, oh my God, like, here are the obstacles, and blah, 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 and, that didn't really happen. It was resistance.
And that was a long living, desire. It was for years, so that's, how I knew it's a soul desire. And, it wasn't one obstacle after another. It was just sort of, it was a lot of resistance, and it just never really took traction. It never caught until really co-creation coaching. But I think part of that was I was kind of trying to do it in the wrong way. I think part of it was I just needed to, there was more growth I had to have. I just didn't know where I was going yet. And so, I had to really do that. But it wasn't that the universe didn't want me to have that, So that was definitely a soul level. Because I had fears, like, what if, because I grew up, and I told you this, Christine, always believing I had a special purpose. And, after a while, though, like, I would say in college was when it started to kind of wane a little bit, because I would hear from others, oh, everyone thinks they have a special purpose. That's nothing special. Everyone thinks that way, and you're just another person, and things
they shoot
Right.
you
And
down.
so I felt like, oh, well, I'm not being realistic, and everyone feels like that. So what if I'm just imagining it? What if I'm just supposed to do the 9 to 5 job thing? I'm never supposed to have this really.
I don't know. I never really felt that way, that I had a special purpose. I mean, we all have
Yeah.
unique purposes, maybe, but I never felt like
Right.
you
I
do.
always
Or
felt like
did.
from a young age that I really have something big in this life to do, and I have a special purpose, and I have to do it.
But that's a
That is
soul
a soul
thing. That's not grandeur
No,
or
it's not.
something. That's because then you'd be telling
Right.
everybody. I mean, I know you're just it, but like you'd be like, no, but you do. But you'd be like, oh, look at me, and I do that. Like you could tell
Right, yeah.
egotistical, that kind of thing. But when you were I was the only person really. I don't know if you told other
Not
people
necessarily feel like
about
good
it.
friends or that I could trust.
But even then, they shoot you down. Like, because even like I've told friends about my desire, and this is a desire that's over 20 years. Okay, so and they've done that to me. They've said the same thing to me. Like, oh well, that's impossible. That can't happen.
Exactly.
And
Right.
okay, and I kind of just. I don't know why I didn't fight for myself, but when you hear it over and over and over and over again.
As I went into college and I really had to think about what I wanted to do long term, and everyone's saying, you have to get a real job, you have to be practical, you have to, be realistic. And I thought, well, maybe that was just a dream. Maybe it just was a childhood fantasy. And
Yep.
And that's it. But that part of me always called out to be fulfilled, and that's how I knew it was a soul level desire. And I knew I needed to do that somehow. I just didn't know how for a long time. So that took time. But I did have obstacles. But they were things, again, it really went back to my own self-doubt, not like real obstacles out there that I couldn't overcome. You know what I mean? It was just my own self-doubt, my own kind of not knowing where I wanted to go, not knowing exactly how I was going to do this and that kind of thing. And so it's just a different flavor than, from the obstacles I'm talking about with the ego desire, where it's like, it's usually this very potent short-term desire, but as you try to pursue it, it's one obstacle after another obstacle after another. And so it feels very different. Okay, so again, I don't want, if you're having resistance, that doesn't mean it's ego desire. I'm just, you'll know. I'm just saying, if it's something that's kind of short term, it's not been kind of recent, and you're trying to pursue it, and you're running into obstacles nonstop, and you just literally can't overcome them, and you feel like you're pushing against it all, then it may be ego desire. But I would not take this point on its own. I would take it matched with the other 2 points, at least one of the other 2 points. So that's how you know it's either an ego desire or a soul desire. If it's a soul desire, I guarantee you are meant to achieve it. That doesn't mean I'm guaranteeing you will achieve it. That's up to you. I'm guaranteeing you are meant to achieve it, and that if you open up to the universe, you will be guided to that desire if you get out of the way. If you're in the way, the universe can't do anything about it. But I guarantee you that if you open up to that and it's a soul desire, then you are meant to have it. Okay? So, and here's the second part of this. You're meant to have it soon. Because you're not meant, okay, if you have this really deep desire, and if you're getting out of the way, you're not meant to wait a decade or 2 decades or 50 years or something. That's not what you're meant to do. The universe isn't about that. If you're getting out of the way, and this is a soul desire, and you really feel a lot of energy behind it, you're meant to have it soon. Now, if it's an ultimate level goal, then it might take some work. And I've said before, ultimate level goals are 6 months or longer, 6 months to a year or longer. It depends how much in the way you are. But, okay, so for me, yes, my spiritual goal took me a long time to overcome or to achieve, but I was in the way. I really got in the way, and it just wasn't clear, and I just wasn't very focused with it because I just wasn't sure, number one, if I was supposed to have it, and number two, how I was supposed to have it and how I was supposed to do it. But in my experience so far, if it's something that's strong, if it's something that you really want, and if it's something that comes from your soul, it doesn't need to take 10 years. And again, this is something a client asked me because she said, afraid if I let go. And because I told her, I said, well, the universe wants you to have this. She said, but when? What if it's not for like 10 years? I said, well, then you wouldn't be working on this right now. Your focus would be elsewhere. Your focus would be on something else. And you'd be working on that instead. The universe doesn't do that. You go in steps, and so that's what happens. But if you have this really big strong desire and you're working on it now actively, and you're putting more energy into it, and you're flowing that energy, and you're getting out of the way, then you can have it soon. Now, how soon is kind of a little up to you, and a little the universe too. It could be a little bit of time, but it's not going to be a decade, and generally it's not even going to be a year. It just depends. Things can move really quickly when you get out of the way. You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
Like things people have, the pattern I've seen in people is that they struggle along sometimes for years because they don't know what to do. And then something clicks, and just like that, they have success. And of course, it will grow from there. And I'm talking about success of any kind. It could be abundance or money. It could be relationships. It could be career. It could be health, whatever. But they'll struggle with it for years, and then one day something will click, and then the whole thing will fall into place in a matter of sometimes months, sometimes weeks, sometimes days. That's the pattern I've seen. It's not this, slow, really like the slog to success. It's, it can be like that if you get in the way, but when something clicks, it clicks and things move and the universe works and it's magic and it just happens. Okay, I'm not saying overnight, I'm not saying in one day, but generally a matter of weeks or months is the longest I've seen it happen. But everything else has to be in place. You have to get out of the way, and you just know when it's time. You just have, like for me, with co-creation coaching, I just know that it's time. I see the momentum. I feel the momentum. I see everything happening, even though I have doubts sometimes, like anyone does who's in business or any kind of goal. But I see and I feel that it's time, and it's been proving that to me. You just know when it's time because you see the momentum and you feel it. And, I used to say, Christine, even after I met you, I would say, oh, I really hope it's soon. I would even say sometimes I feel like it'll be soon, but there was no outer evidence of that. There was no, it was just.
Right. You were too scared to take the next step.
And so it never happened. And so I kind of got discouraged.
Well, and I think the universe was trying to prompt you, and you wouldn't, you were too scared. Because I think you felt the energy of, come on, let's go. Because do you remember that reading you got? It was a crystal reading, and it was like a long time. It was like way before we were still living at your mom's. And it was, and she said, I'm ready, like, when I'm just waiting for you, like, or something. I don't remember now. But, yeah, I think the universe has been trying to get your attention for a very long time.
And I was definitely in the way, and I'm sure it could have been a lot faster if I'd allowed it. But I remember saying, like, oh,
Well, I'm sure.
I feel like it'll be soon, but it was just more of a hope, and I would get in the way and nothing would ever happen. And there was really no evidence. It was just sort of, I really wanted it, but again, it wasn't, there was an energetic difference.
You didn't deliberately try, energetically. I don't think. You just, I feel like it's gonna, you were yearning for it.
The universe had to kind of drop it in my lap. I didn't know what to do myself, so I just kind of hoped it would just happen one day. So I always, even though I was running into a lot of obstacles, I knew that it would happen eventually. And, it was, yes, I really wanted it, but it just, at that time, I wasn't ready for it. I acknowledge that now. And I think it could have happened sooner, but it just,
Yes.
I wasn't there yet, and I wasn't listening to the universe, and I wasn't really responding to those cues, and I didn't believe in myself enough at that time. So the biggest thing here is that if you have a strong desire and you are working towards it actively, and you really believe in yourself and your ability to have it, or you're working on having that belief at least, you can have the desire soon. The time difference is not because of the universe. I probably could have started this in my early 20s if I really wanted to. And there were a lot of times that I really felt that it's going to happen any time now, but I just wasn't there. And I think it could have, though. It reminds me a little bit of, remember Richard Dotz, and his experience was always that, like, it was for 10 years he tried these different techniques and nothing worked until it finally clicked for him. He said, I could have probably had it 10 years ago. But in a way, he was glad that he went through that experience, but he didn't have to. And that's how I feel. I tried probably for about, let's say, 8 years or so since college, like during college and then after. And I could have probably had it a long time ago.
That's how I feel too.
But I wasn't ready, and in a sense, I'm glad I went through the things I did. But I probably could have in a different way if I was ready for it, if I was there, if I was getting out of my own way.
Right.
So if you have it now, if you have the strong desire, it's not the universe that's making you wait. I mean, like I said, sometimes there will be a timing thing where, it might take at most a few months, and, sometimes at most maybe a tiny bit longer than that. Not usually. Things usually move pretty quickly when it's ready. Okay, but it's not going to take 10 years. It's not even going to take 5 years. It's probably not even going to take a year. That just depends. But it's really up to you as to how much you're going to get out of your own way and let it happen. Again, it is a partnership, so I'm not saying a totally passive approach. You will set your intentions, you will work through the resistance, but as for everything else, you will get out of the way and allow the universe to do its thing. And that's really the best thing you could possibly do. Right. So if you do that, then you can get it very, very, very quickly. Since I've learned how to use the law of attraction, I've never had to wait more than a month and a half to 2 months to get something I really wanted. Right? I mean, now, like I said, I had an ultimate level goal, and it took me about 7 months to work my way up to that, but I took it step by step, and I had little goals working up to that. And as everyone knows who has read my previous posts, I say the ultimate level goals, you have to split up into steps, right? So that sometimes will take a little bit of time, but not years, never years. But that brings me into, we did recently we are offering it, but we recently finished a class called The Art of Reality Creation 3.0. And in that class, I outline all the steps that you need to take to get any kind of desire, whether it's next level, whether it's ultimate level, or any kind of goal that you have. And we discuss a lot of the stuff about, how to get, especially these big manifestations that I find people have the most trouble with. So, I find that I get the most questions about. So if you're interested in checking out that class, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/ARC3. And so again, I hope that this answer helped everyone and help you to know what kind of desire it is you're dealing with. I think most people I've seen are really dealing with soul level desires, not ego. If they're asking that question, they care enough to ask that question. It's probably a soul level thing.
Yeah.
Right. So I hope this helps. And again, if you want the show notes or the transcript for this podcast, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/create031. And if you'd like to rate us on iTunes or subscribe to our podcast, you can go to cocreationcoaching.org/create-iTunes. So thanks everyone for listening, and we will see you guys next week for another episode of Co-Create Your Life. Once again, I am Brandon Oliveras.
And I'm Christine Oliveras.
Anything is possible.